everyone, let me introduce myself. My name is Vinunisa. I am a master's student of International Accounting and Management program. During my study, I joined the 2020 European Union Manila Winter School, or also called Eumol Winter School, that was held at the University of Siena. So in the Eumol Winter School, there were many activities held. One of the activities are the roundtables. The roundtables were held online 3 times through the WebEx platform, and it was organized by Professor Gabriela Gimiliano, that is also the lecturer of business law in the Business and Law Department at the University of Siena, and also the chairholder of Eumol Jean Monnet Chair. Each roundtable divided into 2 rounds. The first round, there are some expert speakers who explained and analyzed about the implementation of Payment Service Directives, or PSD2, in many countries in Europe. And then the second round, the participants may ask questions and discuss with the panelists. Okay, first, I am going to explain about the first roundtable that was held on December 3rd. There were 3 panelists. The first panelist is Madam Ivana Tarak-Vukomanovic. She is the director of the Financial and Supervisory Law Department at Croatian National Bank. The second panelist is Mr. Jere Tarama. He is a PhD candidate at University of Helsinki in Finland. The last but not least, the third panelist is Mr. Nikita Divisenko. He is also a PhD candidate from the Law Department of the European University Institute in Florence, Italy. Okay, so first we need to know that Croatia is not a very big country. The inhabitants in Croatia are around 4 million. Related to the PSD2, in Croatia there is one credit institution that is considered as PSP under the PSD2, which is called Croatian Bank for Reconstruction and Development. However, previously, Croatia has not used the national discretion that have payment institution under exemption, so-called small payment institution. Some of the payment institutions in Croatia even decided to downgrade to small payments institution, and the other payments institution even decided not to align its business to the PSD2. So in Croatia, the payment initiation service providers and account information service providers had not been active prior to the PSD2. Furthermore, Madam Ivana also explained that in Croatia, Croatia has not much experience, so there's doubt in the Croatian national market. As example, there is no intermediaries in payment. The account information service providers considered to be payment service providers. There is also a doubt regarding to the security, data privacy, and data protection in the payment initiation service providers, because the PISP have access accounts in accounts service in payment providers bank by using security credential users. Also, in Croatia, the account information service providers obtain data and do the credit scoring. So probably the users of the service are not only the consumers or the legal entities, but also the banks. And furthermore, the market in Croatia is quite shallow. It is dominated by banks. Croatia does not have many entities license and payment institutions or e-money institutions. There are 2 large institutions dealing with card payments, but both of them are owned by the significant Croatian bank, and they operate either in Visa or MasterCard scheme. Okay, going on to the implementation of the PSD2 in Finland. The population in Finland is quite similar with Croatia. There are about 5.5 million inhabitants. And similar to Croatia, the market in Finland also quite bank-centric. So in Finland, when we talk about payment services or the organized payment services, we usually talk about cards or credit transfers. There are many useful information that related to the implementation of PSD2 in Finland, that in finance or retail financial service, there are three largest banks which dominates about 90% of the market, and then the amount of the cash in circulation in Finland is very low, probably one of the lowest in Europe. And in Finland, the card payments is dominating. So the share of card payments is around 60% of all payment transactions executed in Finland. In Finland, and the credit transfers dominates about 98% of all executed payments. And the number of cross-border payments in Finland is very low. It's only about 1 or 2% currently. In Nordic countries such as Finland and Norway, there is a dual use of banks, which leads to some kind of problems on the implementation of the FD2, and it's related to the strong customer authentication from the PSD2 and local law. Okay, now going on to the Estonia. Estonia is probably the smallest compared with Croatia and Finland. The population is only around 1 million, and in Estonia there are 13 payment institutions and only one money institution. And this money institution is obtained the license about 1 year ago. So previously there was no e-money institution in Estonia. Um, Previously, the market in Estonia was dominated by remittance service providers. But now we can see the development that now many people in Estonia use more and more often the non-banking PSP for online shopping and also for daily purchases. Um, the, pop- the people in Estonia use the payment instruments such as cards that is issued by the payment service providers. In Estonia, the banks and all credit institutions are actually already well complied with the PSD2 requirements. And regarding to the COVID-19 situation, surprisingly, there is no significant loss in the Estonia. Probably it's because Estonia is a small country, but also Estonia is not hit hard as the other countries in Europe or maybe in the world. And PSD2 also gives positive impact for Estonia. It gives more clarity to the fintech sector and also introduce clarification to the commercial agents' sanctions and also extensions for telecommunication service providers. And the last one, Estonia, also known that good for the fintech and innovative environment. Okay, now moving on to the roundtable 2 that was held on December 11th. So the first panelist, Mr. Peter Kotab, he explained that in the implementation of PSD2, it brought a lot of legislative work, but overall, it doesn't give any dramatic impact in the Czech Republic. He said that the legislative organs in Czech Republic have taken a rather conservative approach. So they don't change anything if they don't feel like to change it, and not changing something that has been working well. When the PSD2 came and replaced the PSD1, the regulation and the legal framework has changed. The regulation developed into a complicated situation and not as simple as it was before. What is changed actually the scope, and it also extends the regulation. Mr. Peter Kotat gives information that the old Act on Payment, which regulated the payment services and the payment industry until 2018, it only had 147 sections, which around 30 pages. And meanwhile, now the new act on the payment containing around 280 sections, which is almost double than compared to the previous one. And now it contains more than 50 pages. But actually, overall, there is no major change in comparison with the previous directive. Going on to the second panelist, Mr. Martin. In Austria, the implementation of PSD2 gives no comprehensive act compared to before the implementation of the directive. With the regards of implementation techniques, the legislator decided not to incorporate the PSD1 in existing national acts, and the same also applied to the PSD2. But several different acts must be amended in the implementation in order to fit in the Austrian legal system. However, as long as the act doesn't contain any special rules, the previous and the general rules may be continued to apply. In Austria, rather than splitting up the PSD1 and the PSD2, adopting the directive in separate acts give advantage for Austria, such as to compare the Austrian rules and to European directive become easier. And the court in Austria is consumer friendly, so the clauses are interpreted very strict in the most consumer friendly manner. Actually, sometimes it leads to some kind of frustration on the side of the payment service providers that it's probably hard to fulfill the strict requirements of the court when apply the contractual clauses. But yeah, that is the regulation in Austria. And also, in the end, Mr. Martin also mentioned about the controversial issue of the ING Bank. The preliminary ruling of Court of Justice related to the ING Bank case. Going on to the roundtable three, the first panelist, Mr. Christus, he told us about his experience in the late 80s. He said that it took around 36 days to complete a payment service. It happens because there was no internal market and also the technology was very low. The most important thing, the difference between PSD1 and PSD2 is the Annex 1, which is contain a list of payment services. The other important thing is also services which are provided and allowed to be provided not only by the banks but also by separate companies, so-called Payment Initiation Service Provider or PISP, and Account Information Service Providers or AISP. Now, we need to make sure that those provide payment services in competition with banking sector should be subject to some kind of regulation. And there is also another element which is very important is the exemption, which could lead to the idea of the PSD3. In Greece, the development of fintech or electronic payment services is quite low. There is only three Greek e-money institutions and nine payment service institutions. So the market is still dominated by banking sectors. And the last thing, there are two choices of strategies for the development of fintech company. First, become bigger and become a credit institution or bank, or sell themselves to the bank. Moving on to the second panelist, Mr. Fernando. He explains that in Spain, the reaction of banks to the PSD is like facing an enemy. There is an asymmetry in the sharing of data between bank and fintech firms because through the PSD2, the banks are obligated to share the data of their customers with the third players. So it's called open data or open banking. Meanwhile, the vice versa, or the use data of the fintech firms by the bank is not under the regulation. So to limit the power of fintechs, fintech must share the customer's data with other third-party players, even bank. The other reaction of Spanish banks is also develop new platform or create their new own products. There's also another reaction, which is to do a collaboration with the enemy or with the other fintech firms. Lastly, related to the situation of COVID-19, there's also the idea of eliminating the use of cash in Spain. The last panelist, Mr. Daniele from United Kingdom, he explained that his explanation is quite similar with the explanation from Mr. Christos and Fernando. He agreed about the importance of PSD1 and PSD2, the Annex 1, etc. Furthermore, he also explained that there are two important things in United Kingdom. The first one is the Financial Conduct Authority, that is a national regulator for internal market and companies who's going to supervise payment systems and the service providers. This regulator regulate regulate the service providers and also give authorization to them. The second one is the payment system regulator. This regulator actually acts almost the same with the Financial Conduct Authority, but they condemn in another way because in this way it is more directed to the regulation of payment services and payment systems in general. Uh, Mr. Daniele also explained that in UK there is one significant difference compared to Italy, that UK is more practical. For example, in Italy, people allow more theory, so it must pass such a long like bureaucracy. Meanwhile, in UK, the things are very fast and simplified. Even the structure, like the previous one that he explained about the building of the Financial Conduct Authority and the Payment System Regulator, is actually in the same building, so they can communicate with each other easily. Uh, Meanwhile, in Italy, it's not a common thing. Like everything is located in separate buildings. Furthermore, in UK, the law system is they look into the practical application first, and then after that they give the conclusion to the theory. Mr. Daniele also mentioned about the mobile payment that is not written in the Annex 1. Meanwhile, actually, it was written in the PSD2, and he thought that the mobile payment is excluded or fall beyond the scope of the PSD2. So after attending the roundtables, what I think interesting is that the definition of payment service directives, especially the PSD2, that is actually one framework to harmonize the payment system in the European Union countries. Well, now I understand more that Why is it called harmonized? Because actually, it could not be something to make every member state the same, because the application and the reaction of the PSD2 is really various in every member state. Like, for example, the implementation of PSD2 in Estonia and UK is different because of the size of the country, and then the implementation of the PSD2 in Finland and in Spain also different because the culture of Nordic countries are different. So from these roundtables, I found the uniqueness of European Union, especially in the harmonization of the payment system.